Hey, I am required by Carla Stockslater, who didn't come today. Oh, yes, she is. Oh, there she is. Okay. I am required by Carla to tell a joke. My joke for the day is about Tim Shepard. Because y'all know that Tim is a high school principal, right? Assistant principal he was. So he went into the fourth grade classroom and to check up on that fourth grade class. And he said, I got a chart up here and I'd like you to write down all the states you can remember. And they came up with 40 of them. And he said to the class, you know, when I was in fourth grade, we knew all of the states. And a little boy responded, well, there are only 13 of them then, weren't there? Anyway, Sue and I are going to talk a little bit to begin with about what this class is going to be about and how these events lead up to our 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. So we'll be having class for today and the next 4 Sundays to deal with the faith of our founding fathers, the fathers of our nation. It's okay, I can't read anyway. Then Ken Burns says about the American Revolution and these events that happened right here. He said that this is the most impactful thing on civilization since the birth of Christ. And we're going to try and help you understand that because it's the most consequential revolution in all of history. It a representation of the first time a war was fought for the aspirations of all humankind, and not just for a few. It's the first war that was ever fought for inalienable rights. These are first things in the history of the world. That's why this is a special event and is special to us. Sue's got a couple things to say as introduction. We're teaching together so that she can keep me straight.
I don't know, there's some jobs that are bigger than all of us, right? But this year we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of our Declaration of Independence. So 2.5 centuries ago, a group of complex and imperfect, but undoubtedly remarkable men got together and started an experiment in liberty. So we're going to explore the world in which they lived. We're going to look at the religious landscape that was there in the colonies at the time. And finally, we're going to look at our founding fathers and at the beliefs that they held. Some were devout, some were skeptical, some were influenced by the spiritual currents of their day. But we're going to look at them and we'll go through each of them, or some of them. And our hope is that this class will leave you with a deeper understanding and a renewed gratitude for those men who left this legacy of freedom for our generation and generations to come.
Okay. Now here's your first question, class. What is the most important, lasting, day-to-day impact of George Washington on your life today, right now? Laws?
Never told a lie.
Dollar bill? We'll let you show you what I think, if we can make it work. Stand up, David. And me. Who else do we got here? Tim.
Stand up,
Stand up, Tim.
Who else?
You notice anything here? The most lasting influence of George Washington is we still men wear blue blazers and brown pants. I mean, think about it. Think about how many men here have a blue blazer? Almost anybody my age does, right? It is kind of required. So it has a lasting, forever influence. So,
Okay. So, I think this is me, right? So today we're going to talk about the faith of our fathers, or is this you?
I think this is you.
Okay. The faith of our fathers, and this is what we're hoping to cover. We're going to explore the religious beliefs and ideas of our founding fathers, what the religion was like, the culture of the religion back in the colonies in the 1770s when all of this was taking place. And where did the concepts that we still enjoy today, some of them come from? The separation of church and state, freedom of religion. We're going to ask some questions like, is America or was America founded as a Christian nation? And what did our founding fathers actually believe? Okay?
Yep.
So we kind of divided this into historical periods. I know they might be kind of hard to read. But the first period is pre-revolutionary, what led up to that revolutionary period. The next one is, we're going to talk a little bit about the revolution itself and what was going on. There was a period in between the revolution and, let's say, the signing of our Constitution, which I guess included the Articles of Confederation. It was kind of a growing pains, kind of a time for our nation. And we're not going to talk a whole lot about that, but we'll give you a couple of ideas on that. And then finally, we'll talk about what's called the Federalist period, which is the growing cohesion between the former colonies, them coming together as what we know as the United States of America.
Okay, in order to get some kind of perspective on this, who was part of this congregation when I came in the late 1997? Put your hands up. 97. That's 30 years ago. That's how long a period we're talking about here. So in that short amount of time, at least from my perspective, one heck of a lot of things happened in the United States. And a whole change in the way people thought, the way the people lived, and what their government was. So you and I are fond of saying that we live in a time where there's change. Oh, if you lived in this time, your head would really be whirling.
Hold on to your hats.
Because you would have no idea, as Sue says, hold on to your hat, if anybody still wears one. Okay. I think, Sue, you're asking them a question,
Yep.
or am I?
Doesn't matter. You want to? Go ahead. Hit it.
Why do you think all of this happened? This is your chance to put your 2 cents worth in. Why did the American colonists get upset and start to have a revolution? Taxation without representation. Tired of British rule. Any other contributions?
Why? Why were they?
Why? What? They wanted freedom, individual freedom? Freedom of religion? So the government wouldn't tell you what to believe and where to go to church? Anybody else? Okay, well, here are some of the historians' definitions. Am I doing this or you?
You are.
Okay. One of the big reasons was because the colonists wanted to go somewhere. Where did they want to go, do you think? West. What's the problem going west? What? Mountains. Well, they knew how to get over the mountains by then. Had a lot of people on the Great Wagon Trail heading out.
June.
That they weren't supposed to go west beyond
Why?
wasn't that part of ending the French and Indian War?
It was part of the French had control of the, and we contested whether who was supposed to be in the Ohio Valley, but the French had control of Canada and all that stuff, but there was somebody else there. The Native Americans, if you're old like me, it's the Indians. They are in the West, and they have land and people, and they're concerned for them. But we wanted to be able to have a desire for territorial expansion so we could go west. Now, are these all righteous people that wanted to do this? Nope. Some of them wanted to be just farmers and go to a little place, but other ones wanted to buy a big tract of land and sell it to you all. They are called speculators. So they get control of the land. So, but we wanted to have a chance to do that. And the English said, hey, wait, don't do that. We'll have a problem. We do have a right to the Ohio Valley. So they needed more land for farming. There was this big growing merchant class in Boston and around New England. And what were they good at? Remember, they're not all righteous, folks. Sailing. Well, what if I told you you were only allowed to buy goods from England? You couldn't buy goods from anybody else. What would you do? You had a ship. The biggest smugglers. John Hancock was the biggest smuggler in New England. That's where his wealth came from. Okay. They were also growing in the population. I mean, it was just rapidly expanding. The average family had 10 children. They had 18 births, but 6 of them died. So you can see why women didn't live very long, having all those kids. The only one even coming close are the Warner family.
Hey, we only have 8, so we wouldn't even be average.
You wouldn't even be average. That's right. So, plus the fact that we were still having lots of immigration of people still coming. So it all led to what we call the French and Indian War. There's another name for that, which is 7 Years' War. That's the war. France and England have been fighting back and forth for 100 years. They were at peace, and this war started up again because one guy with a bunch of troops surrounded a group of French soldiers and shot into them. Who do you think that guy was that started the war? George Washington. He went west with the Virginia militia to capture the port at Pittsburgh, and he found the troops sitting on the road, so he surrounded them, and nobody knows for sure, but they all said George did it.
So, can I just,
Your turn,
oh, it's my turn, okay.
I think.
How convenient. So I just wanted to make a point about the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War. It was probably the first World War, and not the one that we usually think of as the First World War, because it really did take place all over the world. I mean, it was in Indonesia and in Africa, all sorts of places that the French and Indians, anywhere where there was dominance by either the French or the British, they were vying to be the top dog, to be the world leader in trading and in establishing their territory. So we may think of it as just the French and Indian War, but to them, it was really a world war. So,
This all led to a deteriorating relationship. If you can remember 11th grade history, England is in bad shape because they had to pay for the war. So how do you pay for the war? Taxes. So they tried to figure out ways to tax the colonies. One of them was the sugar tax. What do you think they did? Well, it's the same kind of thing that we're trying to do called tariff. They said, you bring sugar in, you have to buy it from us. You can't buy it from somebody else. So you can't send your ships to the Caribbean, get sugar, and bring it back. It has to come on a British ship. That didn't work because we protested. And so they had the Stamp Act. Anybody know what that one's for? Yes, my history teacher over here.
Had to pay for the stamps. Stamps had to be on all documents, and you had to pay for the stamps.
If you had a newspaper, you wanted to buy some land, you had to buy a little stamp. That's a picture of it right there on the far left. And that stamp had to be on every legal agreement. You wanted to get married, have to have a stamp. It was a direct tax. So we had another problem. Well, they gave up on that, didn't work, so they taxed the one you think you know about, which was the thing they loved in the colony, tea. And the tea was, you can't buy tea from anybody but us. And you have to pay a tariff to get it. You think we like that? No. So what do?
Start drinking coffee.
Yeah. That would be my implication. It would be like saying you're not allowed to drink Coke unless you pay the tax. So but they did something to solve that. Something kind of famous.
They dumped it in the harbor.
They dumped the tea from a ship into the harbor. They wouldn't let them bring the tea ashore. They dressed up like Indians and threw the tea in the harbor. So that didn't work, so they did the Intolerable Acts. And there are a bunch of them. The only one you ought to know is they sent a bunch of soldiers to Boston to enforce the rules. And they said, okay, you can have some on this island, but the rest of them, we're going to send 4 guys home with the shepherds, and they got empty rooms at the Warners now, so we're going to send 7 to them, and everybody's having soldiers in their homes. It was a quartering act. So all those things got us Americans really ticked off. This one's yours.
This is me. So I think one of the interesting things to think about or to consider is how these things all looked from different perspectives, whether you're a colonist or whether you're a Briton from Britain. So for a long time, Britain had a kind of unspoken policy called salutary neglect. In other words, they would have a colony, they would have a place that they've decided is now going to be British territory, and they kind of set you up and let you go. So they didn't have a whole lot of rules and regulations. They kind of expected you to do your own thing, to be prosperous, to grow. And as long as things were going well, they pretty much left you alone. And that's kind of the world that the colonists have been living in, where there were certain rules. We want you to trade primarily with Britain. But even that was not really terribly hard enforcement. So if Sam Adams did a little trading on the side, they kind of looked the other way about that. So the other thing to consider is that during the French and Indian War, of course, it was not just the British troops fighting, it was also the soldiers from the colonies fighting. So they considered that they had done their part. They joined in the mother country, they fought for this land, and now they expected to be able to expand west of the Appalachians. Well, that's not how it worked out. So after all these years of you do your own thing, Britain came in and said, that war was expensive. All the wars that we engaged in throughout the world were expensive. We need to do a little recouping here. And by the way, we can't afford to fight another war. So to keep you from fighting another war, we're going to draw a line pretty much down those Appalachian Mountains. And we don't want you going on the other side of those mountains. Well, from the colonists' perspective, they're saying, wait, we just fought. We had men die out there in order to be able to do this. And now you're telling us we can't? That's part of their idea of liberty. We should be at liberty to do this. This is the land that we live in. It's the land we fought for. And it didn't turn out that way. So Britain's looking at those colonies and saying, these 13 colonies are getting a little above themselves. They're stepping out a little bit too far. We're going to set up some rules. We're going to clamp down on them. We're not going to have them starting wars that we really can't afford. And because, you know, they're going to expect our soldiers to come in there if another war starts up with the French or the Indians. And besides that, we've got territory worldwide. I mean, we have enough to try to deal with and manage. We don't need you getting above your station here. So that's part of how Britain's looking at it. Plus, they're looking at these 13 colonies, and while they're vastly important to us and to all of our ancestors, they really are not that big a deal to Britain. The largest colonies or the most rich, most profitable colonies were not our 13 states. It was Barbados, it was Jamaica, it was those colonies that they owned down further south that were engaging in trade with both us and the motherland. So they're saying, if we let these little guys get away with it, who knows what might happen in the future? So that's kind of the British perspective on it. So all of those conditions led to the perfect, kind of converged into the perfect set of circumstances. The colonists are unhappy, there's money that needs to be raised, there's tension amongst the troops, and what happens? The Revolutionary War. Now, I mean, it's been a long time since I was in high school. I know that's hard to believe. But we want to go through just a little bit of the Revolutionary War and remind you about that. It happened between 1775 and 1783. Started in Lexington and Concord. You remember Paul Revere, the ride? Yep, that's where it all started, with that shot that was heard around the world. And it went to 1783. We often think of the war ending in 1781 in Yorktown when Cornwallis surrendered, but it really took another 2 years for us to come to the Treaty of Paris, which actually ended the war. And the reason is that it took so long is that it wasn't a final, like a clean cut. It's kind of like combat just kind of petered out, you know? Like we were all a little tired of this by now, and it just kind of petered out. And the English in general were war weary. I mean, let's assume that the colonies really had a lot more motivation to continue that fight. But the English were pretty war weary. And back in the motherland, there had been a kind of a change in the guard. Lord North had been voted out of the parliament. He had no longer had the power he did, and you know, things were not going well over there. So without too much detail of going into the war, we're going to look at religion during the war from the colonist side and also from England's side.
But first, whose side do you think you would have been on? Now, John Adams one time famously said that the colonies were divided up 1/3 patriots, 1/3 loyalists for the English, 1/3 I don't care, just stop fighting. Okay? So how many people here think they would have been patriots? And you got to vote for one, three, or the other. How many people think you would have been a patriot? Most? I don't know whether that's most or not. How many people think they would have been a Tory, a loyalist? 1, 2, 3, 4. You gonna vote, James?
I was a patriot.
Oh, okay. Boy, we got a ways to go. How many people think, I don't care, just stop fighting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're only prepared to defend the patriots and the loyalists. And we flipped a coin and I lost. Sue is going to lead you all in defending the patriots, and I'm going to lead Mary and I and Judy are going to defend the loyalists. So I'll have to actually let you start, and then you and your folks can add some ideas.
You're going to let me start, or you're going to let them start?
Oh, well, let them start. Yes.
Okay. So why would you, let me speak to my fellow patriots. Why do you think we need to make the break? Why do you think it's a good time for us to become revolutionaries?
The British are weak.
Good
British
point.
are weak.
They're weak right now. We've got them where we need them to be.
They don't care about us.
They've demonstrated that they don't care for our needs, right?
Yeah.
Good point.
Rules are holding us back.
Ah, that's right. We're ready for progress. We want to move forward and to the other side of the mountain, by the way.
And we don't want to pay the taxes.
Really? What are all these new taxes all about after all? I mean, we've paid some taxes in the past, but now you're just digging at us. Yes?
No, I was gonna say, because our problems weren't the same as their problems.
That's a big ocean out there, and what we're dealing with here is a lot different from what you're dealing with over there. Yes, Carolyn?
I'd be very frustrated with the lack of respect from the British.
So
To me, the Revolutionary War is a perfect example of the social idea that power controls everything.
Mhm.
And the way that the English treated the New England colonies with the soldiers and all that, that would have infuriated me.
So are we not English citizens, or should we not be English citizens? Did you know that when our guys were fighting in the French and Indian War, that we did not get the same considerations that the English soldiers and officers got? And that, did you know, in fact, that that's why our leader donned the blue jacket instead of the red jacket as a kind of silent protest?
Notice I have a blue jacket, just so you know whose side I'm on.
And yes, Tom, one more?
Yes, to follow up on the idea that Britain was weak at the time of our revolution, Britain was also involved with several other wars simultaneously with the American Revolution. There was an Anglo-French War between 1778 and 1783, an Anglo-Spanish War, 1779 to 1783,
Mm-hmm.
the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War between 1780 and 1784, and the Second Anglo-Mysore War, where that is, between 1780 and 1784. So they were spread thin.
That's what part of what I was saying about it being perhaps truly a world war, at least from Britain's perspective. And yes?
Well, we all left, our ancestors left Britain to get away from them and their rules over there.
There was a fair number of folks who came over here to escape British rule.
The ones came
Mm-hmm.
from England in that area.
In New England.
Yeah.
In the South and in Virginia, they all came to make money.
Right.
Oh, well,
Okay, I'll take you on, okay? Mary, help me out here. I heard somebody say at the beginning, no taxation without representation, right? Well, what do you mean by that? My gosh, how much tax do you have to pay with all these things we suggested? 1 shilling. If I'm a peasant in England, how much tax do I have to pay? 12 shillings. Is that fair? Should have left, yeah.
Thank you, dear. Yes, but what services do we get for that shilling or the shilling and a half that you're charging me? I mean, in England, your peasants have access to all sorts of services as a result. Here, we're kind of left to our own devices, are we not?
Yes.
Except when we start a war and I have to send a whole batch of my troops and pay them to fight your war with the French, which wouldn't have started without that crazy George Washington, I think his name
They
was.
were always looking for a reason to fight the French.
Well, I don't think you would be able to protect yourself from the Indians if it wasn't for us. The Indians over here, the Native Americans over here, they have formed federations. They were groups of Indians really working together, 12 tribes in the Iroquois. And they're sneaking in and killing all these people. And Tom, all those wars you mentioned, they started only after we had our war and we went over there and talked the French into joining our war and declaring war on England. And when we did that, and then when France did that, Spain came along and did it too. And so there we had it. We were trying to defend you people.
And what did we get from it? Did we not fight for that land? Did we not join with you and fight alongside you? And how were we rewarded?
Well,
With a boundary not of our choosing, but one that's been imposed.
Well, look, we couldn't send representatives to Parliament. Look, it's 3 months to get from here to there. By the time we get there, everything they debated is long past. So how in the world can we have representation in the Parliament?
Precisely. Thank you, sir.
Well, okay, we'll quit now. Believe it or not, we got through this whole thing and we were still talking to each other. Let you join the debate. Here's King George. He didn't become king until 1765, so he was a young guy. Let's see. I see nobody as young as King George in this home. Let's see. Lakin, are you the? No, I forget that youngest Warner back there. Yeah, he categories, but the middle one there is a cartoon about the Americans attacking the lion, and Ben Franklin's "Join Up or Die." You've seen that on flags that are carried around these days. Here's the summary of the arguments, and actually normal people made these instead of Sue and I. And you can look up there and see the patriots say people have rights. They say taxation takes away our property or money. They say that colonists don't have a voice. They have no way colonies could be represented. Many colonies were fought in the French and Indian War. She mentioned that. The British personnel caused violence and riots and death in Boston. On the other side, strong, unified British Empire is good for all of you. Colonists, the British subjects, should obey the British law. How many people believe in law and order? Yes, I thought a lot of people. How come we didn't obey the law? They passed a law. It's good enough not to like the law, not to do it? Oh, boy. Taxes due to the French and Indian War was fought to protect you guys. American colonies would be weak without Britain. The French should probably come down and take you over.
How many of you own a musket? Just asking.
Colonies are too far away from England.
It was their law, it wasn't our law.
Aha. Well, I'll let you decide at home over lunch whose side you want to be on. Uh, but remember that there's a lot of people were lawless. A lot of people didn't care, and the majority, probably historians think now 40%, were patriots. But that was not the majority opinion. Not at all. Not at all. It was as much a civil war as it was a war against the English. Okay? Let's see. I think I have this one. Don't
I think you do.
Yes. Well, what do we know about religion? Actually, that was all just to try and get you thinking in the historical period. What we're going to be dealing with in the next 4.5 weeks here is who is who and why and what their religious beliefs were. First off, in America, there were many different denominations. In England, everybody had to be part of the Church of England. Matter of fact, who knows any English history? There was a war between the Catholics and the Protestants. The Commonwealth, Oliver Cromwell actually took over the government for a little while, and then had a king come back. They were going back and forth, so they were fighting about that, even in England. When the Pilgrims came in the 1600s, which was 200 years before all this, they came as a way of escape because they were really persecuted in England because they were reformers. So it was really a fight between the Protestants and the Anglicans. But that's it. Most of the Protestants were also what? Anti-Catholic. They didn't think that the Catholic people had much of a chance, and there were only so few Jews, they didn't think that they had any place either. So that's part of the religious thing. I bet you don't know this, 8 of the 13 colonies, 8 of them, had laws that said part of your taxes went to support the clergy and the churches of the community. Do you know that?
You're a loyalist now?
So that was a big deal. The Congregationalists up in New England, they sure didn't want to have even an Anglican bishop come along. Plus the fact that in the back country there are what? Very few, very, very few churches. Here's the makeup of the churches. Congregationalists were the largest. That's what we would call the United Church of Christ or the Congregational Church. They're the Pilgrims and the Puritans. People came from New England. The Anglicans are the second biggest. That's your Episcopalians. And then you had a few Presbyterians, just 2%, a few Dutch Reformed, a few Baptists, a few Quakers, and 1% of the others. So what we're really talking about is these 2 major religions, Congregationalists and Anglicans. It's also divided up by geography. If you look on here, you'll see up at the top all of the people that are Congregationalists. That's the big yellow part. Okay? Then you have the green part, all the places where the Anglicans, Church of England, Episcopalians are. Then you see little dots here and there for you Baptists and you Presbyterians and you Lutheran. And where a lot of those churches, there's one area there that has a lot of those colored dots. What's it look like to
Pennsylvania.
It is where you sit right now because all the Germans came here. What denomination has the most number of churches in Washington County? Lutherans. Yep. What's next? Mennonites.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
There are, you drive out in the country, you can see a Mennonite church on every 3 miles. Then you have some Methodists, but the Methodists and Baptists were small in numbers at this point in time.
Methodists didn't really start until after the Revolutionary War.
True.
But
That's
John
right.
Wesley
That's right.
was Anglican missionary, so to speak,
Yeah.
in the colony of Georgia.
Okay.
But Maryland is an example. Maryland was established by the Carroll family, who were Catholic.
Mhm.
But on the eastern shore of Maryland, you had Presbyterian churches, and then you had early Methodist circuit rider, so to speak. Only he didn't ride a horse; he had a boat and traveled around the eastern shore.
So interesting.
What's the difference between a Presbyterian and a Congregationalist? Almost nothing, other than something about the structure. Congregationalists say it's just your church locally that decides everything. The Presbyterians say your church is in consort with the presbytery, which is representatives from all the churches in the area.
Can I make one point
Yep.
about this slide? Just when I look at this slide, here's some things that I see. So you'll see that the Congregationalists are mostly up north, and those were congested areas. So that's, even though it's not a large area geographically, that's a lot of people. And Congregationalists, as you all know, tend to be kind of independent thinkers. So it's that same idea of we can determine our own destiny. We're our own congregation. We can determine where we're going. That same thought process that goes into the Revolutionary War thought process. They're coming out of that New England independence. If you see the down south, it's where the Anglicans are. They're much more spread out, much larger area geographically, but it's more spread out and more backwoods type thing. And that is largely where the churches were used as not only as to support clergy, tax to support clergy, it was a way of keeping track of the tax rolls. Mm-hmm. So now we depend on AI to keep up track of where you are. Back then, they used that you must attend church so that we can keep track of you and know who we need to tax, kind of thing.
That gets us right to the next question for you all. What percentage of people living in the United States in 1776 were church members? Some guesses. 90%. 10. Anybody else? 75%. Depend on where you live. But I'm talking about the whole batch, the whole country.
If you lived on the East Coast, if you lived in a village or a town or whatever, church was there. But if you lived out in the wilderness,
it's harder to get to church, yes.
There weren't churches.
Most of the population was in those areas, though.
This surprised me. 17% church members in 1776. I heard a few O's.
I was going to say, there goes your argument that we weren't a Christian nation.
Well, we actually have a period of time when we're gonna have a little coliseum up here, and we'll let people get together and fight about that. But that's not today.
Looking forward to that.
There's a different side to this. In American history, there have been 4 evangelical events referred to as the Great Awakening. It occurred at roughly 60 to 80-year intervals. The first one was between 1730 and 1740, led by an English clergyman by the name of George Whitefield. So this crossed all congregational boundaries.
Did you pay him?
Did he
you
look
pay him to
did
do
he
that?
look at our slide program
I
before we
swear.
got here?
I'll give you that $5 later, Tom.
Yeah. This shows you a little bit about church membership between then and now. We think there isn't very, we're all bemoaning a church membership, what we are, but our church membership is dramatically higher than it was in colonial times. Okay, now Tom, the Great Awakening.
So if you looked at that previous slide, you could see the circle, you could see the large jump in church membership in that time period. And what happened? That first Great Awakening that Tom was talking about. It was a religious evangelical type of a movement. It happened in roughly, there's some debate on when it started and when it stopped, this first one anyway. Roughly 1730-ish, it was the beginning, and roughly 1770-ish was when they kind of think of as the end of that first Great Awakening. So it is right there in that time period that we're talking about here of the founding of our country. So it was a very personal conversion experience, the Great Awakening. It was a time when emotions, up until this point, many times, if you were one of the 17% that went to church, you sat in the pew and you were preached to, and it was very ritual driven, and you were, the good church goer and sat there quietly and listened, and that was about it. But this was an emotional experience. This was much more involved with you and your person. I wasn't done. And so it was much more of an individual experience rather than something that was driven strictly by your clergy. It was evangelical preaching. It was a little bit disconcerting to those folks, those 17%, quite honestly, because it was very emotional. This would have been a time in history where enthusiasm would have been frowned upon. This was not necessarily well appreciated by the already established powers that be. So can I talk about the movie? Or were you going
Yeah,
there?
go ahead.
Okay. Well, there was a movie out just recently. Fred and I went to see it along with our husband, not as a date, although it would have been nice, but with Debbie and Fred. And it was called A Great Awakening. The movie was actually produced by the same folks that do Sight and Sound up in Lancaster. So it was really well done. It told the story of George Whitefield and what happened in his life and during that time period. It was really very interesting. And I'm sure that if you ever have a chance to see it, it might be out there on the, on demand or something now. It's called A Great Awakening, and it would be worth your time to look at.
I agree. We've talked about people. When I was in 11th grade, everybody read Jonathan Edwards' Sinners in the Hand of Our Angry God. Anybody else remember reading that? Yes. Where he says, your life is hanging like a balance over the gates of hell, and you're by a spider web holding on to you, and if you don't shape up, poof, there you go. You are done. A very emotional kind of thing. Whitefield and Tennant were more God is love and loves everybody, but Edwards. Now, as we started to imply, there was churches started to take sides. It was called the old light and the new light. You can guess that the old light were the people who liked a liturgy and a set point of view. And, I remember a lady came here from the Episcopal church, and she was very unhappy because we only read one scripture Sunday. We didn't use all 3 lessons. So she left and became a Catholic. It's funny how people are. That's George Whitfield's preaching stand, because they didn't do this in the church. Where do you think they did
Well, they
it?
wanted to, but they got kicked out,
Yes.
right?
They set up a platform, that stand in the middle of a field. And 10,000 people came to hear this guy. And he went all over the colonies and preaching the Great Awakening stuff. Here are the results of the Great Awakening. One is there are more smaller denominations. As Carolyn said, the Methodists started to grow, the Baptists started to grow, all those churches that were less dogma and liturgy tied. So they went, they kind of went together. How many people here have ever said or thought, well, that's part of God's plan? Anybody want to put your hand up? No? Nobody? A few people at least have said that. That's the old light people. God doesn't do any of the deciding, right? God chooses who goes and who stays. You don't get in heaven by the basis of your work. You get in on the basis of God's work. The other side of that, which came about in this period, was you get in by your choice, whether you choose to have faith or not. Now, we get all divided up, too, on the issue of what you have to do after you make that choice. And some of you would say, well, it depends on how you put it in practice, whether it's okay or not. And others would say, no, it's faith alone. So that's the other thing that's still going on. Why I say this is a continuing thing is we still fight about this. This church, when I came as minister, was fighting about that. They were fighting about whether to have drums and electric guitars in worship or not. So, that we still have old light and new light. We, I think today, try our best to accommodate both kinds of folks because we're disciples and we like everybody. But, you can choose to go to a church. There are a number of them in this area where you'll have all the drums and guitars that you want and have a more emotional kind of worship experience.
I'm going to put one more thing in.
Okay, go ahead.
So I love words. I love, the origins of words. And so this was one of my favorite things. It was on some slide here, but one of the arguments against that old light or the new light was not only was it very enthusiastic and therefore unruly and, unseemly, but it was also promiscuous.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning at the time that men and women were worshiping in the same area together. And they were like saying, amen, and whoa, moaning or commenting when the preacher was talking. What promiscuous behavior this was.
And you can go out in the woods too. Okay, who were the founding fathers? Sue's going to write them on the board, and this is the end of our class today because we have to decide who they were, who you think our founding fathers are. Tell me the names you know. Jefferson. Jefferson.
John Adams.
Jefferson. Franklin. Adams. Anybody know anybody else? Washington. Hamilton. Madison. Monroe.
John Jay.
What?
John Jay.
John Jay. Somebody
See, I
you don't know
told
much
you.
about, but one of Sue's favorites. John Hancock. Barry.
Yep, he's up there.
Yep. Hancock. Who have I missed? Let me see. I've got Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, Washington, John Jay, Hancock, Monroe,
Well, one of our Maryland natives, John Carroll.
Rowe, John, and Charles, but we'll just put Carroll up here. Hamilton, yep.
Yep. What?
Oh,
Oh, how you're another person reading
that?
my slides. Here are the
Hamilton.
things they had in common, and that was they were mostly wealthy, mostly landowners, mostly professional people. Like they had a lot of lawyers, so let me tell you, there was a lot of talking going on in the Constitutional Convention. They were entrepreneurs. Almost half of them owned slaves. They were highly educated in classical studies. They were believed in the natural rights of human of the Enlightenment. People were well read about the philosophers of the age. They distrusted absolute power. They had a desire for self-government. They were legacy focused. Now, we won't mention any names, but there are some people today that are legacy focused by building monuments to themselves. But we're not talking about. I won't talk about. But when they mean legacy focused, is they saved every scrap of paper that they ever wrote, because they figured if we win, everybody's going to be reading all our stuff, and we want to get all our thoughts written down so the historians can get an accurate perception of who we are, where we've come from, and
So if there had been an internet to capture everything and hold it forever, they'd have used it.
yes, they would have, definitely. Somebody said this, anybody who signed the Declaration of Independence? I'm afraid that we can't get that many in 5 weeks. Somebody else might say, well, if you were a general and you fought in the war, you're a founding father, right? How about those people that wrote and signed the Constitution? You know, most of these people you don't know anything about. I mean, somebody tell me something about George Reed. From Philadelphia. Okay. Well, I was surprised anybody knew anything about that. So the historians have what they call the triple test: leadership, longevity, in other words, it wasn't just a little short period of time, and high-level statesmanship. So somebody like Tom Paine, who's in our picture list, had a huge influence on the revolution, was an atheist, went back to France and was involved in the revolution there. And, you know, he doesn't make the triple test. According to the historians, these are the folks that make the triple test of leadership. Now, we might add somebody else here and there because Sue and I have a romantic relationship with one or two of them. So in the following weeks, we're going to talk next week more about the background of the religious period in that time, and then we're moving on to George Washington, which everybody agrees we have to cover, and then we'll try and get to some of the others as the weeks ahead go. Okay? I'm only 6 minutes over time.